We got to introduce ourselves too here.
Sorry.
What
Sorry. I just went up on a rant
started
there, like a 10-minute rant at 100 miles
it
an
was
hour.
great. Don't get
Sorry.
me wrong, but I hit the live button and it's like
Yeah.
it does this
It just
thing
blew
with
up.
the
When I get
connecting.
excited about a topic, that's how I am. When I get excited about a topic, I just go off and I won't stop until somebody stops me. So please.
That's right.
So,
So, anyways, I had the connecting thing up there, but you were on a roll, and I was like,
yeah.
"Yeah, there'll
Yeah.
be any moment. There'll be this moment. I'll be able to launch it and say, hey, this is
That's
Harrowings
right.
Podcast, and we
Right.
are scratching the surface with the Everyday Junglist about using phages to detect pathogens in the environment, much less getting at them to the point where we can, conquer our pathogens that are now resistant to different forms of antibiotic. I mean, I have a friend. Have you ever heard of Patch Adams by any chance?
I have heard of
Yep.
Patch Adams. That was a movie. That was a movie. Robin
There
Williams.
was a movie with Robin Williams, yeah, acting as Patch. There's also some DVDs out there, the real Patch Adams. He's a real guy, right? He's a clown doctor.
Right.
But
Clown.
he hasn't practiced in a long time, but he's got this idea called the Gesundheit Institute, right? That was part of the film, how he established this sort of communal kind of treat people with kindness and not as and actually this sort of ties into our whole thing about patients, right? And
Yeah.
hospitalization and people dying before you can actually get to the point where you've identified their pathogen.
Yeah.
And he actually lost a foot below the knee amputation because of MRSA
Mm.
and recurrent infections in the foot. But he was up and dancing again once he got the prosthesis done. Right.
Yeah.
I met him
It's
out
interesting.
in West Virginia. Go ahead.
Did you really? Yeah. Actually, you met the real Patch Adams. You're saying you actually met him.
Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
There
interesting.
was a weird little thing they did out in West Virginia, where it's just where not far from where the Goethe Institute itself is. He's built this little thing called a dacha, and he has all this land, but there's just some like retro hippies hanging out there these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's got a huge building he's trying to complete for an education center and such. And it's out in the boonies in West Virginia, right? That's where you could find cheap land for
Yeah.
his
Yeah. For sure.
project. So he's still at it. He's
Hmm.
still doing clown tours going out. So that was not exactly where this podcast was going to go, but you get
Clowns
me
scare me,
talking
pal.
about
I gotta say, clowns scare me. I'm one of these people that's scared of clowns. I'm not one of these. I don't find them funny. I find them more fearful. Maybe it's because I grew
it.
up in the Stephen King era. I don't know what the deal is, but just clowns.
And I
I
have to
just can't.
admit, I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but I found him to be a bit obnoxious, really.
Really,
And
as a clown
person,
or as a person, as a clown. Is that
as a person, and he was always a clown, though. He's never
right? Right.
once you're a clown.
That's interesting. So that's actually interesting. But again, a lot of doctors are like that, pretty obnoxious.
Well, that can be that too, right? But
Huh.
the vision
Interesting.
he's got, though, I think of humane kind of
Yeah. I totally agree, man.
holistic health. And he
It
does
matters.
go out into the third world with his clowning caravans and stuff. In fact, I wrote a little thing about my friendship with Tina yesterday in one of my most recent posts in Denmark, and she's a clown as well. One of the things she's done is to develop a clown persona called Tiggy. He's perpetually 3 years old. That can be obnoxious too.
That could, yeah, yeah, that would probably could be an option. I can see that.
I don't know. We're all kind of obnoxious to somebody. We're not
Yeah,
never going to see
I'm
it.
not for myself. I'm obnoxious to quite a few people. More than more than just somebody.
Well, when you've got a lot
Yeah,
going on up here, that
yeah,
can
I
be a
guess.
hazard.
I get myself in trouble all the time. Not all the time, but a lot. And I got myself kicked off Medium, permanently banned from the site for
Oh,
bullshit.
really?
Actually, I just that whole thing, it just complete. Actually, was a really scary situation because the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is what they cited. This was the issue was apparently. It allows for the accuser to obtain the home address of the person they are accusing of doing whatever this is they're
Is
doing.
that called doxing? Is that what that is?
I don't know what the thing is, what the whole deal was, but this Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Anyway, so this person gets has my home address and is proceeding to threaten to give it out to a mob of people on the internet who are like who's
That's it.
have gotten all riled up about some bullshit thing that was completely wrong. And
Mhm.
and meanwhile, my wife is like, dude, you are like, I had no idea any of this is happening, right? Because I don't look at like, I don't, yeah, I don't really necessarily look at everything that's going on the internet. I'm kind of, I'm not necessarily tied in, and sometimes I'll write something and I just move on to the next thing. I forget all about it. Meanwhile, there's a whole Facebook page formed, like an anti-Dan Facebook page, all this crap, it's, about this stupid thing that was completely wrong. And but the person has my home address. And so my
Yeah.
wife's freaking out, rightfully so, because they're talking about violent people are talking about committing violent acts, right, against me. So and my wife is like, what in the so we were thinking about moving. We were getting ready to lawyer. I mean, the whole deal. We were really really scared at one point. I mean, super scared. Fortunately, the thing it kind of all died down, and I think I just it was a nightmare situation, hell, it really was, and it really was based on complete bullshit. And I hope I never have to go through that again. So I try to be more careful today. I'm still sometimes stupid, but I try to be more careful
Yeah, being
about what
careful
because
is good, because
yeah,
we're all vulnerable. And I
I
looked
just tell
up
you
the
what, man.
word that I was talking about, dox, the action
Yeah,
or process of searching for and publishing private and identifying information about a
yeah,
particular
there you go, dude. That's exactly
individual
what.
on internet, typically with
Yeah,
malicious intent. So yes, you were
yeah.
doxed, is what that is.
But this was Medium's fault but it wasn't their fault. It's the law's fault because the law requires them to provide that information
And
to her,
the
which
question
is
is that I asked that's right thereafter, is doxing a crime?
yeah,
Right? And
yeah.
doxing is not universally recognized as a crime on its own.
It's not.
This term, by the way, is completely new to the internet, and it comes, of course, from documentation, docking,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
DOX. So,
yeah,
neologism, I love how our language evolves, right? Laws are still evolving in many places. Doxing cases are prosecuted under existing statutes for conduct that poses a significant risk or causes harm because it can, it's kind of like, have you ever seen the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin?
with Steve Martin.
Speaking,
Yeah, I don't know if I've
speaking of
seen the movie.
obnoxiously
I know all about it, but I don't think I've actually seen it. But yeah, I
end to
know.
end. Now, I love the scene in which a serial killer basically just goes through the phone book. At first, Steve Martin's real excited about being in the phone book. He says, "This is the kind of publicity that makes people." But then the serial killer goes
uh,
down and
I see.
this
Yeah,
and just nails that guy. And then he's like trying to take a shot at Steve Martin. Is working at a uh, gas station, and suddenly the can starts, malfunctioning from his perspective. There's
so
something.
was that voice based on a Saturday Night Live character that he played? Was that something that
I
how
don't
that
know.
evolved?
I don't know if he did a Saturday Night Live on this jerk or not, but he had
Okay.
had the wild and crazy guys that
Yeah,
they
yeah,
had,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the Czech brothers or whatever.
yeah.
Mm,
Man, we're old. We're old, Hal. Or
I'm
at least I
old.
am.
Yeah, I
It's,
see you're gray. Yeah.
I'm old. Yeah, yeah.
I was
It's going
sitting at my
so
barber
fast.
yesterday
Yeah,
getting
it's
my
happening
hair
so
cut.
fast. Yeah.
I go down to Diego's here in DC, and it's like pictures. Diego's dead now, but when he was alive, he like knew everybody. So there's like pictures of him with the Pope, and there's pictures of him with George W. Bush, and his name it
Uh-huh.
just this long list. So it's a great place to get your hair cut. It's the home of the DC Power Cut.
I see.
And I'm looking down at my
DC Power.
down at that thing they
And you're
put
a DC
over
Power
the.
player, of course. Of course, you're a DC Power player, so you have to be seen there.
Yes, of course. This is just the beginning of the development of my empire.
Of
You're
course.
part of the
And
plan.
I'm part of. I'm at the ground. I'm at the ground level, getting at the ground floor. That's good. I've never done that before. I'm always getting at the top level and falling down to the bottom.
Well,
Rarely
I
have I gotten to
actually
the
had
ground
my
floor.
friend Julia on here the other day, but she's like, if you weren't there at the beginning, you're never going to reach the top. Just forget about it. So you got to be an
That's a
early
pessimistic
adopter.
attitude. Kind of a pessimistic attitude, but
Well, you're seeing how Substack is, right? You've got some
yeah.
people who have like these enormous, even staffs to run their Substack.
Do
And
they? Wow, that's crazy,
I'm
man.
working on
I you work on that. Yeah, 100. So I'm still sitting at 100 subscribers or something. I don't know, after 2 years or whatever it is. And it's so funny. I talk about this a lot. You read my stuff sometimes, and I like to joke about it because I sometimes I think people. I don't know if people are deluding themselves or they're just lying, or maybe I really am that bad. or just that terrible. But I
Delusion.
mean, I'm
It's
just
the
delusional. But I've
death.
been I guess, I mean, because I've been at this for such a long time now, doing this thing. This like 7 years I've been writing and publishing. I was one of the earlier writers on Medium, like almost when it started, and like, and I wrote on that platform forever, and I never had more than maybe I don't know. I never made any money. The only and none. I lost money, and even when and I was on it before that you could make money. I mean, it was like a whole. It was anyways.
Money is
So it
an
was
illusion, you know.
yeah.
It's
It was
just
like I never
something to
made
move
any.
around.
Right, the same thing. And of course, Substack's the same way. I was like, oh look, there's something I could try. Maybe people on this platform will like my writing. And no, it turns out that's not the case. So, and there are
Well,
a subset, a very small, tiny minority of people that do like it, which is great. And I'm happy to keep doing it just because of that,
well,
and because I
right.
enjoy it. So that's
And
the only reason I do it, anyways. So.
find your tribe, right?
Right. Mine's very, very small. It's a
Yeah.
tiny, tiny tribe. Nano tribe.
I've been told I am an acquired taste.
Right.
There's people who tell me that have not yet acquired that taste.
Not yet acquired. I'm just going. The other problem I have is I tend to offend. Like we were talking about this offending people thing, and I've had it. In the years, people have every once in a while you pick up somebody that really seems to really like your writing, and you kind of you develop some friendships and things, and it always seems like no matter what, I'll write something at some point, and it'll just piss that person off, and I'll never hear from them again. so, so
Yeah,
hopefully that doesn't
I
happen
tell
here,
people
Hal.
that.
Which is weird because you don't think that. You think these people are open minded but sometimes you say things and you write something down and it really offends somebody, really in a way that they just can't get over it, and they're gone.
It
So
happens to me. I will do this thing where, I have 5,000 connections on Facebook. They limit you to that. They won't let you have more than 5,000. I really wanted to bring some loaves and fishes when I got there, right?
I didn't know that. I did not know. I would never know. I don't really use Facebook all that often, but could
Well,
be why.
I started this on 6degrees.com too. I think I was the second most connected person on 6degrees.com back in
Oh,
1999, 2000,
wow.
when
So
that was
it
alive.
used to be big. I'm just kidding.
I still am big.
I know
I'm
that. Come
real
on.
big.
I know that. I know that.
My mother would say, I'm Brett big. Anyway,
Right.
um, anyway, the problem largely lies, I think, in the fact that people do get offended. And it reminds me of what
Well,
Christopher
very easily.
Hitchens had to say on the subject. You remember Christopher Hitchens?
Oh yeah, I love the guy.
Here's my
That's
neighbor
great.
here. Actually lived over in
Was
the
he really? No
Wyoming.
way.
Yeah, he had the
No.
penthouse in the Wyoming. And I
Oh,
used to
no.
cross paths with Christopher Hitchens up from
He
time
was
to time. I
crotchety,
never met him.
crotchety. He was crotchety. I would say on TV, he seemed crotchety. He's quick to anger, quick to, but in a good way. He always had it.
Well, he's
To me,
quick to
I like.
basically get umbrage, I would call it. I
Yeah,
wouldn't call it
he took a lot of
anger.
umbrage at lots of things. Not anger. Yeah, anger is the wrong word. He took umbrage at many things, which in a good way. I thought. I
Right,
didn't agree with what he
right.
said all the
And
time for
he'd
sure.
say, when somebody says, I'm offended, I'm still waiting to find out what you mean. So what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was.
you've got to take
I tried.
responsibility for your responses to the stimuli that are out there in the world. You shouldn't. I like to say,
Yeah,
what one of the things in the early days of the internet I found was that people would get upset about what they read on the screen, and they would insist that somebody be silenced and
yes,
exiled
yeah.
for
Someone's gonna
what
pay
they
for it,
wrote.
right?
It's just what you experienced, right?
Yes, yes.
And my
Yeah.
idea is these are photons bouncing off my retinas until I do something with it in my occipital cortex back here and then process it with this apparatus I've got in here. Supposedly, I haven't really actually had much. Actually, they did do an X-ray on it one time and found it was shrinking. Uh,
I don't think they would take an X-ray probably to figure that out, but
well,
he,
it was what is it? MRI, I think. Right?
I see, I
Yeah,
see.
one of those imaging technologies.
Could have been a
This,
CT, might have been a CT.
I just had this part done on CT, both
I see,
contrast
I
and
see.
without. No lung cancer. Hey,
That's good. That's
exciting.
good. That
Nothing,
is good.
no significant abnormalities. Just had my hypochondria reconfirmed. Um, anyway,
But it's
um,
because you are the significant abnormality. That's the
we're
entire
doing
being.
stuff with our brains with the sound waves that hits our eardrums, and the stimuli that are coming in to our limited and distorting perspective, and then we're accusing. It's like this, man. You take some
Yeah,
matches, you set your own hair on fire, and then accuse the other person of arson.
yeah, I
You
hear you.
run around
The
in
other thing is,
circles.
yeah, the thing is, for someone like me who has no influence, no reach, no real ability capability to do, I mean, to get offended by something I
Yet,
write is like so useless because it's like
yet,
10 other people probably saw it. Who cares? Now, if I were famous like you, maybe it's a little different
no,
story.
no,
But
no, no, no.
for
You
someone
see,
like me,
this is the point. This is the point. we're doing primary
Yeah.
documentation of our
Yes.
perspectives,
Yep.
right? And historians in the future are going to pick this up and say, this is where it all went wrong.
Right. They're going to point right at me. It's this guy. It was his fault.
He was talking
I
about
always knew it all
phages,
along.
man. He was talking about phages, and
You should
somebody
have been out
picked
there
that
doing something.
information up. And then the phages started doing this stuff, and
Yeah.
12
It's all
Monkeys all
downhill from
over
there.
again. You've been,
Yeah.
12 Monkeys, right?
I do. Yeah, I do. I like the movie. I think there's the whole virus. This is another great topic. The thing about viruses I like is the causing of apocalypse for viruses. There's this thing called optimal virulence, which basically guarantees that a virus will never cause a world-ending plague or any infectious agent,
What
simply
is it?
because it's called optimal virulence. And basically, the idea
Optimal
optimal virulence is a sort of an evolutionary thing, and
virulence.
it basically it basically restrains any given infectious organism from wiping out too many things because they need living things to spread, right, to survive themselves. If you think about it, a virus isn't without people around or something to infect. A virus has no reason to be around, no raison d'être, if you will, no reason to be alive. Now, they're not necessarily alive, depending on who you ask. I happen to think they are, but the conventional wisdom is that they are not alive. But they need living things in order to replicate, right? And so, if they kill everything, they don't have they do not have that. So, as viruses get more virulent, more hypervirulent, they tend to, and people die more quickly. The viruses that tend to that do that also die, and so they don't
Huh,
replicate. And so there's this geographical limitation, and just a virulence limitation because of that necessity to have some living things around to replicate. Now, the downside here is you can genetically modify organisms today that you couldn't in the past, and you potentially, theoretically, maybe could genetically modify a virus to overcome that. But even in that case, you still need a way to transmit. Now, if it's very stable in the environment or in the air, maybe you could do that. But in any event, I don't want to give anybody ideas, but it might be possible with genetic
I
engineering.
told
But
you.
for nature to do it is stupid, and it makes sense. It's really dumb for nature to do that because the viruses want to, just like anything else, want to. We can't say want, but that's what they do. Is they propagate, right? They want to they replicate themselves. They can't do that without living things around to replicate in.
Mm.
So
Well, I love
people
it.
don't tend
I
to think about it.
actually
So the
flipped.
virus, yeah, the Stephen King book, The Stand, all those things where the virus wipes out everybody. Although not, it wasn't everybody, but there's going to be a limit to the number of people that could die, for sure.
Yeah, I just flipped open the article about it. Paul W. Ewald apparently was behind an American evolutionary biologist specializing in evolutionary ecology is credited with source of this. Plague Time: The New Germ Theory of Disease, 2002 is one of his books. And so this is great. So it can't be wiped out because of optimal virulence.
Not totally, not totally. A large portion of people could be still not a huge number. Still give me a huge number. I mean, I'm not saying that there wouldn't be significant damage, significant deaths, but there definitely would be. But yeah, a certain number
I have
you
hope.
can't.
You've given me hope. And
Right.
but what sprang to mind to me was, well, we shouldn't be trying to you know, fight viruses. We should just let them all run their course then.
Yeah, the thing is, it's a give and take. It's hard to It really it's so complicated because the thing about COVID and I really don't like that people have kind of says, well, COVID's gone and it's no big deal now anymore and this that because unfortunately because of the lack of accurate vaccination in the U.S. I mean and I guess now it's not even required or it's not even available unless you're over 65 apparently to get a COVID vaccine. Well, I mean, you're going to see it. COVID it has something really unique and very scary kind of characteristics about it, a way to evade the immune system and different things. And,
Mm.
and and some people are to become like hyper, shedders. They shed huge numbers. And these people, the irony is the people that shed the highest numbers of virus and get the most other people sick, get the
Yep.
least sick themselves. That's the great irony here that most people don't realize about SARS-CoV-2 and COVID. So if you're one of these people that are like, I never get sick from COVID, that's because you're getting everybody else sick. But the people that get
I
super
was I
sick,
was one of those people.
yeah, and
And
the people that
actually
get
we
super
lost
sick,
one of my good friends.
it just sucks. It
My
really
wife
sucks.
my wife is my really good friend, and one of her friends lost her husband. He had been on Jeopardy. It was a guy named Chad Kapoor. He couldn't get tested because early on you couldn't get tested unless there was good reason to test you.
I don't
And he
know.
just got sicker and sicker, and then he died of this at a young age. I mean, he was in his I
Yeah,
don't know if he even reached 40 yet. Um,
because
and
what happens?
me, I got it,
It's,
I'm pretty sure, at the Dead and Company show at Hampton Coliseum. They call it the Mothership. And I was down front, and the first show I was up, but the second show I was down in the mash of people out in front of the stage. And I made a good friend there, but I also got COVID, I'm pretty sure, because that
Yeah,
was November, like,
yeah.
I forget the exact date,
And
November
you didn't
something.
get real sick, right? So you didn't get super very
I
sick at all.
I
A
no,
little
and
sick, yeah, sick, but
I went to the
yeah.
doctor, right? I've got this
Uh,
really good doctor, now retired during the pandemic, but he was like an old school guy, and he had, like, pictures of Lou Rawls, who had treated him, on his
wow.
wall. One of these great guys. So, my doctor, had me chest X-rayed for possible lung cancers like I just had recently. The CT, right? CT
Yeah,
scan they do to check for small nodules and whatever that could be cancerous. Because if they catch those early, it's really good. If they don't catch them early enough, you're dead.
yeah.
Anyway, so what happened was he found ground glass opacities and my blood work showed elevated levels of D-dimer,
Hmm.
which, as you probably know, is a clot
Yeah,
breakdown
yeah, yeah.
product. So he like calls me right back in and is like checking me for my calves for clots and things and not
Yeah.
finding any
That's COVID,
scratching
huh?
his head. But he was running me through all these tests, probably
He's
because he
smart.
was aware of the symptoms of COVID were beginning to
Yeah, he was
show up.
smart. Make that
And
connection, he was smart
this was
because we didn't know that early. Yeah.
January 2020. There was supposedly no COVID in circulation in the US yet.
Uh,
I
yeah,
had already had it.
yeah.
It
I
had
had
been in
to.
circulation at Dead and
Uh,
Company at Hampton
Yeah,
Coliseum in
he's no shit.
November.
My wife's an infectious disease researcher, and her background is in vaccine and highly dangerous pathogens research. She's worked in this area for a long time. And she was working on plague, bubonic plague, actually vaccine development, and
Plague?
in a regional bubonic plague, yes, Yersinia pestis,
Bubonic?
and but bubonic
Yeah.
plague, but she got pulled into the COVID thing real quick because she was a vaccine expert, and she was working at a CDC regional biocontainment laboratory, and they were one of the first. Her laboratory was one of the first to get human clinical samples of potential positive samples, and there was a lot of fear. I mean, there was a lot of fear. Hell, you don't understand.
I understand, yeah.
Yeah, I guess you do understand, but there were professors and things that 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 worked in the laboratory that shared space and such, and all of a sudden they're not showing up to work, and they disappeared, and they're just just really cowardly behavior. And meanwhile, there's my wife. And then, a few other brave going in the lab every day, suiting up, the whole deal to work with, they've got no idea. And I really was so disappointed in the behavior I saw from some of these so-called, professors or whatever who were banging down the door trying to get into these laboratories to do work because it was, considered prestigious to be able to work in there. But then all of a sudden, when the shit hits the fan and they're called upon to do their duty or whatever it is, you can't find them. They can't find them. And it just, I can't tell you how angry I was. I was so pissed about that. And then we also had
Hippocratic oath?
hecklers.
No,
Oh, it's bullshit. Then we had hecklers outside the lab, heckling my wife and shit about the work she's doing. When she's coming out of the lab, God, I've never been so angry in my life. I got to tell you how
hecklers?
there
What were they
was
heckling? I'm
hecklers, dude.
sorry.
Well, it's because they knew that this was a virus research lab, and they knew that there was COVID activities happening inside, and so they're people that are leaving work, and they're hurling epitaphs, and there's people weird random people showing up. I mean, it's a secured
Because they
facility.
think it's a big conspiracy or something?
Well, whatever. Yeah, it's a secured facility, so they can only get to the parking lot, but you got to go to the parking lot to get to your car to go home, right? And so my wife's complaining about this, people showing up, these random weirdos showing up, and screaming and ranting and raving, and they call the police a few times and get them full, but you don't know somebody can show up with a gun. You just don't know how dangerous people
Exactly.
can be. And
Exactly.
so of course I'm scared shitless about the whole thing, and so is she, and I don't know, man. And so it was a tough time, and I didn't see her for. She was in the lab 18 hours a day. I kid you not, 18 hours a day.
That's a lot of stress. Yeah.
I mean, fully suited up in BSL-3. It's almost, it's not BL4, but they wear very similar, completely suited, and you got the air hookup and all this crap. And it takes a half hour just to get suited up to go into work. And then you're in there all day. And it's a miserable. And I did a little bit of work in there because we were co-developing a method, and it's so miserable being in one of those suits. You can't even describe how miserable it is working in one of those things. You're sweating, and it's just, it's how you can't manipulate things because your hands, I mean, it just really is a horrible way to work. But
Yeah.
to
I'm
do it for
sure.
18 hours a day for 7 days a week, and literally because they couldn't get people to come into work, people are sick, but meanwhile people are dying too. So it's like you got to do
Of
this shit.
course. Yeah. A lot of people
And of course,
dying.
and then there's this animal work too. Okay, that's the other thing. How and it's hard, man. It's hard on people. I mean, there was lots of it's really hard.
It
So
is.
I mean,
And it's heroic at the same time. And then you're putting up with whack jobs on top of it. It's amazing.
people. I mean, there were people broke down. I mean, there were at least three people that quit. I mean, they not quit. They couldn't do it anymore. And so it was. I mean, my wife's got really a ton of credit. I mean, she's got an unbelievable. She's just an unbelievably strong person. But
Good.
yeah, it was a tough time, and I'm glad it's over. I'm glad that that period is over, and it's one of the reasons that we came out. That we were in the Midwest at the time. It's one of the reasons we came out to the coast here. She got a new job, a better job. I don't know if it's a better job. It didn't end up being a better job, but it was a different job. Let's put it that way. And that's how we ended up sort of down here in Mexico, or living down here. But
So how is Mexico, by the way, as far as living goes?
I mean, I really like it, Hal. I do. I think, we were talking about the medical thing earlier, and I have a lot of experience with the medical system here in Mexico now. I actually had a surgery down here because I was pricing it. I was price shopping it even with insurance in the U.S. It was going to run me for this. It was going to run me like 13. It was going to, I think, like, I can't remember what it was going to be, like 3 or 4 thousand out of pocket. I was going to have to pay, and I got the exact same surgery with the same quality surgeons, everything else for like $800 here in Mexico, without insurance. So, and it was, and then the experience was great. And so, and every experience I've had with the Mexican, healthcare system has been very good, but that's if you can afford it. Your average Mexican has to use the public health system, which is not nearly as effective as the private
Mm.
system. But the private system in Mexico is quite effective and quite good if you can navigate it. It's somewhat complex to navigate. I would say it's easier than the U.S. system, but and if I spoke Spanish, it wouldn't be so quite as complex. But fortunately, where I am in Tijuana, 90% of people speak English because it's so close to the U.S. And it's you kind of can get away with not having a whole lot of Spanish background here.
Well, I loved
But even
Denmark's health system when I was
yeah,
there. Although I did kind of feel like it was a little like going to a vet.
yeah, that's how
And,
vet.
well,
So
vets before, I should say,
I,
because going to a vet now is, you get
we
better health
deal with
care for
vets a
the
lot.
cats and dogs here in DC.
Yes. Mexico. That's the other great thing about Mexico is my wife actually has a cat. We show cats, Oriental short hairs. Actually, we were actually at a cat show last weekend down in Querétaro, Mexico. But when our cat won a couple of big awards, but in any event, so we deal with vets a lot, and veterinary care in the United States is out of control price wise. It's ridiculous. I don't know how anybody can afford to have companion animals there anymore because it's ridiculous how expensive it is.
Yeah,
But
my
that's not the
wife
case
is
in Mexico.
allergic to all animals, actually, which is really helpful
That
because
saves you a lot of money. That saves
we
you a lot
have
of
an
money.
IKEA golden retriever we named after my father's golden retriever. But
Yeah.
it's from IKEA and it doesn't eat, doesn't poop, doesn't need walking. Anyhow, let me get back to the COVID thing. I was just looking at Wikipedia's stats on this, and it says confirmed cases are 778.5 million, rounding down a little bit. And they say the true case count is expected much higher. Deaths they have reported at 7,100,783, but that's reported, but 18.2 to 33.5 million. Oops. And I lost him. I don't know if he's coming back or not. But hey, it's something, huh? I don't know if I lost my friend for any particular reason. Let's see if we can get him back. I'll invite him back in. See if he can make it. He may have had a glitch in his system or a power failure on his phone. For those of you who joined us, though, I see we have quite a few who have joined in and been listening to us ramble at each other about things that are interesting to us. It was wide ranging, I tell you what. Really grateful that we could have the Everyday Junglist in. Let me see if I got him on our communication. Sorry, man. You're saying, give me 2 minutes to get some charge back in and reboot it. Okay, we are standing by. So I was talking about the rates, and it's apparently fatality rate they're saying is about 1% for COVID, so do take it seriously. Um, phages for antibacterial, the pathogen identification to start with, because you got to be able to understand what the pathogen is that somebody's getting, is where he's coming from. And this is guy is a researcher in this field. And I know he talks rapid and it may not be easy to understand. So hang in there with us. There we go. Phone died. Yeah, this will happen. Mine has about 68% power, so I can go on and often do. So if anyone has questions, anyone has anything they want to say about our conversation thus far, any critiques, complaints, have we offended you? If we have, that's really your responsibility to handle it. Is my thesis. And I don't mean to be harsh. I'm not trying to offend people. I'm trying to inform people. I'm trying to have interesting conversations with interesting people that might be attractive to some of you all who come by. Um, what else do I want to say about that? Well, Everyday Junglist. I was going to charge his phone. I am just talking to the crowd. And, it's not a huge crowd, right? But it's the beginning. I think of Life of Brian where he falls down onto one of those little stands and starts just prophesying because that's what he's supposed to be doing up there. And then he gets these people following him that chase him down and end up insisting he's the Messiah, but he's not. He's just a very naughty boy, according to his mother, Jerry Jones. And, I don't know. I don't know what's going to work. But I do know one thing. We are having a he's gonna be back in 2 minutes, he says. Great. I am riffing on the life of Brian and how we are not the Messiah. But okay, so there we go. By having conversations with each other one on one, we can come to a greater understanding with each other. We can learn from each other things we would never learn otherwise, right? And any of you could be my guest here. I don't care much who the guest is. I usually find points of common humanity between us. And we get an opportunity to play through the creation into which we've been thrown by dint of being born and that Gewoffenheit, as Heidegger put it, is a big
Yeah,
deal, right? Now we're on Heidegger. So it is what
Heidegger,
it
Martin
is.
Heidegger, being in time, right? No, is that Hegel? Is
Gewoffenheit,
that Hegel? I can never remember. Is that Heidegger or is that Hegel? I get the two confused all the time.
being in time is definitely, you got
Heidegger.
Heidegger there. Yeah. Heidegger was a boozy beggar who's very seldom stable. I had Christopher Hitchens, a recording of him singing that, and we're going to lose you again, it looks like. Why don't you get a good bit of charge in your phone?
Yes, there you
Or
go.
don't use your video or whatever. That
I don't
saves
know what the
something
deal
else.
was. I know the phone's at that age stage in his life. I've always had this. Well, probably everybody does, where your phone gets that where it starts to die really quickly. So the battery, where previously it lasted, a day or a day and a half. Now it lasts like 2 hours or 3 hours, and you get it charged again. So any
Yeah.
case, but it's
I'm
plugged in now,
hovering
so
at
I'm good.
68%. If you manage to hang in there, that's great. Um, yeah, so Christopher Hitchens sang the Philosopher's Song in one of off the cuff and one of the clips I've got of him. So we were talking a little bit about him. We were talking about when I left, the COVID, fatality rate is where you dropped out. And I pointed out that 1.08% fatal is what they're showing in Wikipedia right now, if you can trust that.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't trust anything, though. If
The
it's
thing,
printed, it's
yeah,
suspect. Do your own research.
I hate looking at the fatality. I hate looking at the fatality rate when it comes to disease because it's so misleading. Because really, more of the problem is not the mortality, it's the morbidity rate and then the illness rate. Because and you look at the most effective, going to the realm of biological warfare, the most effective biological weapons are not the ones that kill, but rather the ones that maim or
Incapacitate.
incapacitate. And so, chikungunya virus is a great example of that. I just got the vaccine for chickpea, which not many people, nobody's all ever probably heard of this virus. Very few have, but it's somewhat prevalent in South America and Mexico region, sort of like dengue, but it is crippling. I mean, and the vaccine itself is also crippling. I mean, I was on my back for a week, 7 days
Wow.
actually. I was sick as a dog for 5 days
What's it
and
called?
very sick for seven. Chikungunya virus, ChickV, it's sometimes known as ChickV is what it goes by. You can get it in California actually at the CVS's. I think because there's such a large military presence here is the only reason why. I doubt you could get it anywhere else in the U.S. I could be wrong. But in any event, I wouldn't recommend getting it unless you really need to because it is painful. I mean it's basically as you get the disease. I mean that's how many vaccines work. I always laugh when people say I got sick from the vaccine. That's how they work. So news flash. That's what they do. You're going to get sick, yes. Now the idea is you don't get as sick, and at the duration, like because with chickpea, for instance, I was sick as a dog. I couldn't get out of bed for 5 days. But I can't imagine if you actually get the disease, you're like that for 3, 4, 5 years, or potentially the rest of your
Infected
life.
mosquito bite will get it for
It,
you.
it's horrifically. I mean, the symptoms. The nausea is so bad. The pain in the joints. You feel like you're a 90-year-old arthritic I mean, it really is so painful. I can't even imagine how I can describe how painful it was. And I've had pancreatitis, necrotizing pancreatitis, which is one of the most painful conditions you can have, and it's up there. So it's bad. And my wife says dengue's worse. She's had dengue actually. She's had almost every tropical disease. She was worked in the rainforest in Australia, so she's exposed to many things. Probably one of the most heavily vaccinated people on the planet, by the way, too. My wife. Another interesting fact about her, but in any event, but dengue apparently they call it breakbone fever for a reason with dengue because it's the pain is just hard to describe. But chickpea was very similar, and but as a kid by the biological warfare agent, which is why chickpea is so dangerous potentially, because if an enemy were to use that as an agent of attack, you could incapacitate a military very very quickly for the remainder of their lives basically.
Well, this is
So
where I tell you that historians of the future are going to look back at this and say,
I
yeah, they
didn't give it all
started
away.
talking about it
He
right
gave all the
here.
secrets away. Yeah, right. And that's the thing is, as we talked about with the alphabet virulence thing, getting people sick is a much better strategy than killing them from the virus perspective, because
What?
they can still move around, they can still infect other people. Kill them once
What?
they're dead, they can't. It's harder. Well, they can still, but it's much harder once you're dead.
Well, it's kind of like that Cardiops, I think, fungus that infects ants and makes them into zombies.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
It's
Very interesting. Yeah,
horrible.
I'm very bizarre. I'm into the fun. I really enjoy fungi. They are they do fall into the microbiology realm, even though they're eukaryotes, not prokaryotes like bacteria, but they're more
Isn't that
actually
sort of
many
the
people.
idea behind Day of the Dead and, or rather,
Yeah, they're the video game. Yes,
or Night of the Living Dead was the old film.
yeah. All right,
That's
that's
a
the
really
forest.
classic horror film. And it came out of Pittsburgh. And one of my friends actually was the star, the strong female lead in Day of the Dead. So
Yeah,
which is really becoming kind of like now enshrined as a seminal piece of
yeah, that's dope.
feminine.
That's Toby Hooper, isn't that Toby Hooper? The director of that. Toby
I,
Hooper, he's a famous
the
lead.
original director is George Romero.
Oh, George Romero. Okay, that's okay. That's I thought that was Dawn. Maybe I'm thinking of Dawn of the Dead. One of those.
Dawn of the Dead may have been picked up by I don't I thought that Dawn of the Dead was really very
Look that up.
comic, and
Yes,
Day of the
correct,
Dead not so much. But
correct. Yes,
so they were all over the map, and of course, Night of the Living Dead was all in black and white, just
yes, the original.
real,
Yeah.
and also had no happy ending, which I think is great too.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is
No
unusual
happy
for the
endings.
time. Which is I think it was unusual for the time.
It
Maybe I'm wrong,
was.
but I think
It
I think
was.
it was very
And the
unusual for the
main
time.
star in it was black, right? So
Yeah,
that
that's
was
right.
kind of
That's
like
right.
also weird for the time. It's
I,
1968, 69.
I'm
So
looking
my
at my
friend
screen now.
Laurie
Sorry, I'm looking.
Cardile in Pittsburgh, her father was hosted a thing called Chiller Theater that everybody in Western Pennsylvania would watch as kids. Chiller Theater would do these horror films, right? And he was known as
Uh,
Chilly Billy Cardille. Not deceased, but quite a fixture. Pittsburgh's just a weird place generally.
it is. I
Um,
know Pittsburgh actually fairly well. I grew up in Cleveland, or spent time. So I spent some time in Pittsburgh. My parents are from Sharon, Pennsylvania, Farrell, Pennsylvania, or
so
my
Cleveland, that's the
dad.
mistake by the lake, according to
Steak
Pittsburgh.
on the Lake. Yeah, yes, I know it well. I actually was at the old stadium there, the oldest Steak on the Lake. The tribe, the tribe, Chief Wahoo, the most
Yeah,
racist
apparently this
baseball organization of all time.
this chickpea thing, by the way, has been circulating in enzoitic cycles in the sub-Saharan Africa for centuries,
Yeah, yeah,
involving wild primates and arboreal mosquitoes. Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
It's an ancient virus. Many viruses are ancient. They are very very old. Predate the fungi by a long. Speaking of fungi, they predate fungi by quite a number of years, millions, in fact, potentially billions. And I can't, I don't quote me on that. But
I think
it's funny. I find
eukaryotic life is just the weirdest, The whole idea of
it's hot.
being eukaryotes, it's bizarre,
Yeah, the
and I
yeah.
what are the chances? What are the odds of it developing, do you think?
Apparently pretty rare from what we know so far. It seems like it's awfully rare. But again, the universe is so big. It's hard to you can't actually imagine it in your head how big it is. And so when we say, well, it's rare because we only know about us. But in reality, the number of habitable, what looks like potentially habitable from our perspective, habitable planets is quite high, very very high. And it gets higher and higher every day as our ability to image, far out in space or far back in time is gets better. So
Have you been
I think
following this thing about Three Eye Atlas?
there's so many of these things that pop up around, different things out there that are unusual. And these days, it seems like I don't get too excited about any of them. So I'm not sure what's on this one as what's supposed in the
What's got
others,
me
but
now is I just found out today that apparently the wow signal that we picked up like
mm,
at 40 some years ago on 7,
uh-huh.
right?
Yeah, I remember that.
Apparently came from the same part of space from which this thing was coming at us.
Well, the same part of space is, I mean, if you that could be the size of the same part of space. It could be something beyond the imagination, your ability to imagine. I mean, that's quite a statement there. The same part of space. Okay,
No, I know. But it's like,
I
God,
see.
the press is like really digging for it.
I guess, yeah, it
And
must
we
be.
are so gullible, you know?
Yeah, yeah, we kind of are. It's hard, and it's not necessarily people's fault, anybody's fault, because it's these things are not easy to conceptualize
No,
or impossible to conceptualize really in many cases. So it's easy to be fooled or to read too much into certain things, put it that way.
no, I'm
Even
really
for me,
kind
and I'm a scientist, and I'm trained as a scientist. I've been a super critical, skeptical person my entire life, and I still get tricked, from time to time. Very rarely, but I still do.
yeah, I'm
Well, no, I
kind of
don't.
a
I'm just saying that to
Neanderthal.
try to. I don't really ever get tricked anymore. No, I do get tricked still, occasionally.
I'm kind of a Neanderthal running around in Homo sapiens territory, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I just am kind of perplexed by technology and all that we're learning. But then again, I'm like looking back at how have you ever done anything with the acceleration of knowledge?
What do you mean? What do you mean? In what sense? What do you
Well,
mean by that?
there's this idea that Robert Anton Wilson had. Do you know Robert Anton Wilson? Do we have context there?
I don't actually. Maybe I do.
Okay.
Maybe somebody
Robert
tell me.
Anton Wilson, now dead, was this guy who grew up in Brooklyn, but he's kind of a polymath, and he was also kind of a stand-up comic, and he was also a lot of things, right? Um, he went to Kavutsky's linguistic thing, what do they call it? Semantic kind of the map is
Okay.
not the territory space, right?
Okay.
We all have these models, but the model is always wrong. But some
Okay.
models are useful, that kind of idea.
Okay.
Um, and he was very entertaining, so he was quite often called upon to speak. He wrote a book called Prometheus Rising, and then he
Okay.
wrote
That's what I know.
some others.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and why am I talking about him? I think I just lost my thread again, but it'll probably come back to me. The
I don't.
the
In my
idea, oh
opinion, the
yeah,
philosophy.
acceleration knowledge.
Yes, acceleration of knowledge. That was
He
that was it.
developed what he called the jumping Jesus phenomenon.
Okay.
And it is that you take all the human knowledge that was available at the time of Christ, and that's one.
Yeah. Okay.
It doubles by when? 1500. It takes
Okay.
1500 years to double.
Okay.
It quadruples by the time you get to 1750. So that's only 250 years after 1500 years. By the
Yeah.
time you get to, I think it's I'm not sure what the next one is, but then it's 8, then it's 16, then
Yeah.
it's
So it's exponentially
32, then
doubling,
it's
but and time is having at the same
and
time.
it's doing
Yeah.
this thing, right? It's going upwards.
Yeah.
And I though Jim and I basically told me it was a ridiculous exercise and forget about it. Um,
Yeah.
it's somewhere in the quintillions now and
Yeah. I believe.
accelerating, and it's doubling like in matter of less than a year. Of all the
That's
the
pretty.
information
Yeah.
that's available,
Yeah.
knowledge, information
Yeah.
theory. You may know the book called The Information. I think it was written by Gleick, the guy who did Chaos and some other
Okay.
popular
Yeah.
nonfiction
I
stuff.
know. Yeah. I know. Glick. Yeah. I know. James Glick or Glick. Is it Glick? I always said Glick.
Glick,
I always said James
Glick,
Glick.
Gleick, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. I read
We'll have
Chaos.
him on. We'll have him explain how to
Big
pronounce
fan
his
of
name
chaos theory.
sometime.
Widely misinterpreted, by the way, chaos theory. Widely misinterpreted, but to mean many things it does not mean. But in any event,
Yeah, anyway, I'm getting to the point, I guess, where I feel like I am very primitive in a very complex
yeah.
world of information that
Well, then
I'm
there are
filtering.
many primitive people, and I find it interesting because, and I'm not trying to put people down, but it seems to me that the more primitive people are in terms of their overall scientific knowledge, they tend to be the most pro technology people, which I find so fascinating and weird because the disconnect between science and technology in people's minds is so bizarre to me because it's like they think technology is magic, but it's not. It's technology is based on science and scientific principles. People have forgotten that, or they never knew it, or they don't care. Because you look at the people that are like the most anti-science, and you see some on Substacks. People are saying viruses aren't real. this, that, and the other thing. And these all these people have got 6,000 cell phones, 10,000 computers, all these other things, and they say that how horrible scientists are and science can't do anything good for us and all this. But meanwhile, they're just the hugest fans of technology. And so to me, it's like, well, I don't understand that in your head. This is why you have all this technology that you love so much is because of science. And it's no, so what is, this anti-science thing? I don't get. I really don't get it. And it boggles my mind. That's a major problem for the U.S., unfortunately, in my opinion. And I think it's going to be, if as the, I guess, fetishism around being anti-science and being against, vaccines and everything else. It really is problematic from my perspective.
It
And
is
I
very
hope it changes.
problematic, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring up how ignorant I am, and I know I'm ignorant, but
Yeah.
that
That's
is the
that's
beginning
okay.
of all
If as long as you
wisdom.
know it, exactly. As long as you know it and you're willing to admit it, I think that, and a lot of people aren't. I'm willing to admit that, which is
That's what I have
scary.
you on.
Very scary. It's super scary to think that there's people out there who are like, no, I know everything, and you're not going to convince me that I'm wrong. You're just like, to say that.
Hey,
I'm
I've got
serious. I
this
mean,
book.
I say that all the time, I'm joking when I say it. There are people out there that are serious. They're serious when they say that.
This isn't the book, but this is a book. I've got this one book, and it told me, and therefore I know, and it's all this way. This actually is a really good book. I shouldn't really do that
Yeah,
with
I've
a
actually,
coffee stain on it.
yeah,
The
I've actually heard this
Gift,
good
but
one. I've heard this is a good
Lewis
book.
Hyde. Yeah, he's brilliant, and I love him, and maybe I'll have him on the show someday. I'm
Is he
really
on
kind of
Substack? Is he
excited
on
because,
Substack?
hey,
Is he on Substack? Is he on Substack?
I will have to find out. I get people on Substack though. Sometimes, they'll actually join it. I tell them about it and say, "Hey, get on this and use it." And we got this guy Skip Healy on. He was a flute maker over in Switzerland. Did I tell you about Skip and me talking?
I
Or
think
did
you
you
told
catch
you
it?
told me last time. I think last time we were
Did
on,
I?
you were talking about this
Okay, I
flute
won't
guy,
bore you
the
with it
flute guy
then.
Skip, the flute guy Skip. I didn't think it was boring. I thought it was pretty interesting, but I'm into minutia like that. So
We were on like 2 hours,
about
right?
flutes, talking about flutes. Huge
Well,
audience. I'm sure that one had.
a lot of it was music, and the way in which music kind of infects us like a virus
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
or
it can't
phase.
really get. It's really I like music too, and I went through a period of my life where I was like anti-music, which I can't believe I did, but now but everybody likes the thing about music I find so weird and it's frustrating too. Also, is that everybody's tastes are so different, and someone can say this is the greatest thing ever, and you listen to it, you're like, what? That is garbage. It's complete crap.
Well,
But
you
you can't
see
say they're
this.
wrong, and you can't say they're wrong because they like what they like. You know.
You see that King
I see.
Crimson, right?
I see. I just it's bizarre to me how weird
And
that, and you can't. It's impossible to criticize somebody about their musical taste. You really can't.
get this. There's one woman that I'm friends with who happens to be married to one of King Crimson's drummers, Pat Musteletta. Right.
Okay.
And Deborah said she went into a restroom, at a King Crimson concert, was really sparsely populated when it came to women's
I can
rooms.
imagine. I can only imagine.
There's something about King
Yeah.
Crimson that appeals to males much more than it does to females.
I,
There's always a long line outside the men's room.
yeah.
Just the opposite of what you see at, say, Taylor Swift concert or something. I
Yeah, I would
suppose.
imagine. Yes. Yeah. I've been a
I don't know.
I've been a couple Iron Maiden shows and it was
Please,
somewhat similar.
Swifties, do not come after me. Do not dox me.
Right. Exactly.
But anyway, this woman was in the restroom, at the mirror, and said, "Oh my God, I've never heard something so awful in all my life. Have you ever heard? Can somebody please just make it stop?"
Yeah.
Deborah said,
Uh,
"Well, I'm sleeping with one of the drummers, so I kind of like it."
I kind of like it. Kind of like it. I don't love it, but I kind of like it. Yeah. It's just
Yeah, it's acquired taste.
yeah.
And but it has a lot of variety, is what I like about it. I got into a conversation last night in this Stanford continuing education session on Zoom. I don't go to Stanford; it's on the
I
other side of the world. But my friend David Gantz, who I had on the Harrowings podcast yesterday morning, his time, but not noon my time, along with my vocal coach, he was teaching it, and he's a music journalist, and he's big into the Grateful Dead. So this is called Dead Reckoning. It's history, art, and commerce from the Grateful Dead's perspective, because they have done something interesting with commerce. You know, they broke the rules when it came to music distributorship and said, "You want to tape
Yeah.
our show? Tape our show. We don't care."
Yeah. They were the first to do that. Really. They really. Now it's sort of the norm now with the YouTube era. It's
Yeah,
almost the
just
norm.
get it viral. King Crimson does not allow you to tape their shows, though. That's like one of the outliers, which I really love. There's like, yeah, don't have your recording or video devices. It will
No,
stop the show and demand that the
really.
recording instrument be brought up to the front
Ma-
before they'll come
Yeah,
back on stage.
there are many bands that are like that still that do that that are very much anti people recording their shows and such
Well,
live. But
the main thing on these guys is they want you to be present in the
yeah,
moment with the
yeah,
music.
I hear
They
you.
don't believe
I hear
that
you.
you can actually participate in this with your recording devices. I'm kind of
They could
down
be
with
right.
that.
Yeah, they might
They
be
are
right.
right. Though I still record stuff. I was at the Baygrass Festival and I recorded this apocalyptic version of "Keep Your Lamps Trimmed and Burning" that Elliot Peck and friends did. And I heard Lamp, and I did not record Lamp. I just shut my eyes and let Lamp have its way with my ears and the rest of my brain, as it turned out. That is just these are three guys who just get up and improvise.
Huh.
It seems. I mean, I know they have a structure and such, but they're just very talented and they can mesh together
Yeah, yeah,
and the energy comes up. They'll start with a very simple theme and then they'll just come up and out and expand and overwhelm. This was not bluegrass. So anyway,
yeah.
okay, where I want to go now. We need to, I think, one of the reasons that I was talking in the interim a little bit about life of Brian is that by getting together and having conversations with each other, we can figure out that neither one of us is the Messiah.
This is Monty Python. You're talking about Monty Python here.
Yeah,
Life,
yeah,
Brian.
life of
Okay,
Brian. I
okay,
was talking about
okay.
that in interim. And also that it's really important, though, that we do understand that we are just human beings trying to make our way through a very confusing culture. And it was a confusing culture in the time in which we had one Jesus. Now that we have several quintillion Jesus in terms of knowledge and information available to us, it's even more so. There's a lot of filtering that has to happen.
Wow.
And you've got this idea that we can maybe use this technology, which I think is where our starting point was, to identify pathogens that can ravage humanity in rapid order.
Yeah, so, yeah,
And then I
they do.
started thinking about, well, there are 8 billion of us running around this planet, and it seems to be a big old mess.
Yeah, a
So
lot
I'm
of
not
people.
sure where the balance is. What do you think?
I don't know that. I don't know that anybody knows what the right balance is. And I remember many years ago, you probably remember this era when the overpopulation was the big thing you heard about. Everyone was worried about depletion of resources. We're going to run out of resources. We're never going to have enough because the population is growing too quickly for the planet to support it. We're going to run out of oil. We're going to run out of water. We're going to run out of whatever we're going to run out of. And we've not run out of anything yet. That's not to say we could not or may not. And certainly, I think overpopulation can be problematic. There's got to be a point at which even with the gains in technology, it's going to be difficult to support a ever continuing growing population. So hopefully, Musk and his buddies can get out into space, and we'll be gone. We'll get rid of them. So we'll have most of the planet back. But in any case, at some point, we'll have to probably move off the planet because of that. I think because there's just going to be too many people and not enough resources to support them, no matter what. And we're not going to start eating unless we start, go to the old Soylent Green kind of thing, start eating each other or whatever. I think we're going to have a resource problem eventually. But
There's
you
lots
rarely
of
hear about it. It's so
protein in
funny.
the human.
There's,
You know what they
but you
call
rarely
us
hear about
in New
this these days.
Guinea, right?
No.
You know what they call us in New Guinea, human beings?
At dinner? I don't know.
Long
What?
pig.
Long pig, long pig. Oh,
Tastes like pork.
yeah, man, yeah, that's just crazy. And,
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know. We're
I
gonna
was
have to probably
killing
move
I was
on.
killing
We're
your
probably gonna have to move
virus
on.
too, man.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
But
noticed in the
population,
latest outbreaks in 2020s, there's significant outbreaks of CHIKV
dengue is huge
globally
this
in
year again.
Brazil. Experienced
Yeah,
a major outbreak in 2023. In August 2024, CHIKV emerged on Reunion Island after 18 years of no local
well,
transmission.
look at dengue fever because you're gonna see dengue. You're seeing dengue in the U.S. now in Florida and other places in the U.S. And you're gonna see more and more of it as it moves north. And the problem is you cannot get the vaccine in the United States. And that's a political decision mostly. It's also a partly quote scientific decision, even though it's really not. But the dengue vaccine is widely available south of the border, and I have been vaccinated against dengue. Now, I think one of the reasons it's not available in the U.S. is it requires the patient has to get three different. You have to get three, you have to go in three different times to complete the series. And if you don't complete the series, the downside is, and then if you get actually infected with dengue, you're basically dead. There's this thing called antibody dependent enhancement that happens It's very, very, very bad. So you have to get all three shots, and you have to get in a certain point period. And
And
so the
did you
fear is,
say
I
your
think,
wife had it?
she had dengue fever, yes, in Australia, in the can't remember the name of that forest she worked in. Stupid. It was the most dangerous place in the world, apparently, by square meter, as far as dangerous, deadly creatures per square meter. Anyways, she worked there 5 years, actually, working on a disease, a skin disease, it's related to leprosy, kind of, that basically is really horrible. It's mycobacterium driven, and it basically eats your flesh, but it does so in a way that it's not painful, right? It's very slow, but it kills. The way it works is it produces these toxins that basically kill the nerves, the pain receptors. So it's painless. And so for many people, they don't necessarily notice it, and then it's too late to do anything about it at that point. And it was ravaging the indigenous population in Australia, and they couldn't figure out the source of it, where this mycobacterium was coming from. And it's a really interesting story about where they ended up tracking it down to some
Well, could tell
interesting
us.
thing. I'd rather have my wife tell it, because for me to tell it is not quite as interesting. But in the
Well,
end,
bring her
there was
on.
a there was
Let's
a
talk.
there was a there was a sacred mountain, apparently, of the indigenous people,
Yeah.
that for whatever reason, for really, really long time, it was considered sacred to them. And they were doing testing there, and then they noticed that there was high levels of uranium, or radioactivity, in the area, and they started tracing that, and it ended up being centered in this particular mountain area. And in that area also, there were alligators or something. I can't remember the exact story, but there was some relationship between the presence of these radioactive elements and the
Radioactive
alligators,
elevators?
elements, uranium specifically, and
Yeah.
the alligators, or crocodiles, I can't remember which it was, and then I think it was not mosquito driven. I don't remember what it was, but some bug tick or something, or flea perhaps, that was associated with them all. And in the end, it was the sacred mountain or whatever that they said nobody should climb, is where they had to actually go. And they took them years. It took them like 4 years to convince the indigenous people that they needed to go up there to collect samples, and they wouldn't allow it, because it's sacred to them. So they had to work with, kind of build that relationship with these people to get access to this area, and which is where they found the solution to the problem, basically, which I find really fascinating part of the story. Um, I told that very poorly, and that's it. But I hope maybe we can get my wife on one time. I'll have her come on and tell the story, because it's really, really interesting. And anyhow, so
Wow.
very just coincidental. I don't know if it's coincidental or not, but that this particular place, what they considered sacred, was actually the source of the disease that was ravaging their population. And so and because they wouldn't let anybody up there, it extended the period of time when they were having this problem. Maybe they could have solved it sooner, but
Well,
Building
too bad.
relationships fixed it. The other interesting thing, it's like a whole human drama here. It just illustrates so many morality points and ethical points. The fact that they made friends with these indigenous people,
Right.
and then eventually they trusted them and allowed them access, got them the solution they needed. So it's like very positive, very
Build
good, feeling good kind of
relationships
story.
one conversation at a time,
Right,
right?
exactly.
Build the
It could save your
trust.
life. It could save your entire population, which is basically kind of what happened in this case. I mean, not that it was going to wipe out their population, but it was really pretty devastatingly, really pretty bad. So
It is.
i-
It is
interesting
amazing.
story. Really
Yeah.
interesting story.
And a great illustration. Now we got to write this up in sort of a
I keep telling her to write that into a story, and she won't do it. And she's not. She is a writer, actually. She's not really into writing all that much like I am, but she's very talented. Right? She's very talented at both things. You talk about polymath. She is a polymath for sure. She didn't go to skipped high school, went straight to college, age 14, graduated college at 18, and was almost a lawyer, almost a doctor, almost a vet. She could do small animal surgery. She's also an extremely talented athlete and Krav Maga expert. So she's deadly she's almost Olympic level marksman with a shotgun and a rifle. The woman is extremely talented in many, many different ways. So I'm very jealous. You're talking to the wrong person, Hal, is my point, when it comes to someone interesting to talk to.
well, I'll talk to anybody. So let's get her on
Yeah.
next
I'll bring
time.
her on next time. I'll try to see if I
Yeah,
can
bring
convince
her
her to come
both
on next
on.
time. I'll
Just
try and
even
convince
talk her
her.
into it because that'd be
Just to
really
tell the story
fun.
about the rainforest story about the what she was working on, I think is highly interesting, and it's a great
You know,
story.
yesterday I had Sonny Triple, my vocal coach, on with David Gantz eventually. So that was kind of fun. So three ways work pretty well. I'm
Yeah.
going to have probably, I don't know. Last week we had Kay Stoner on. I've been having her like every Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern time.
Mm.
And we had Origin from Oklahoma, whose actual name is Chloe. And they're both doing like AI stuff and working with
Uh-huh.
agentic AI, relational AI,
Yeah.
trying to explore what can this do? Can we make it? Kay's made a little, cheat sheet that she'll sell you for a set fee where her agents will be your team, you know,
Mhm.
and they're all just AI personas. They're kind of limited and focused, and they've basically been built out to argue with each other.
Uh-huh.
or
And what's the small
cooperate.
fee?
Huh?
What specifically is what do you know what the small fee actually is? Like how small are we talking?
$73, I think. I think it's $73. I remember about
$73. That's an unusual.
$73. It's a
That's an
pretty
unusual amount.
precise amount, right?
It is. That's interesting. Okay.
Why not? I was
Yeah.
bought some other people's stuff. I had this guy named Carmelo out there on your side of the world. He's from Chile
Been
originally,
there. Been
and
there.
he's got this thing called self-disciplined.com, self-discipline.com. And he's trying to sort of like help with people with that coaching journey kind of idea. I think,
Yeah.
about getting your
Mhm.
discipline down so that you're not beating yourself up too much. Because a lot of us will
No,
start something and then not finish it. I've got
never.
some other
I never do that.
Substack things going on.
I never do that. I never do that. Hell, come on.
No,
What are you
not
talking about?
you.
What are you
Not
talking
you.
about?
You're an
I
innocent.
finish everything. I finish everything. Yeah, I hear you. That's tough. That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one.
Yeah, well, I'm a fifer, right? I want to amplify signals through the noise, and I want to get myself coordinated and marching, in a way that's effective and efficient. Like if I
Amplification of
was,
signal is what we were talking about to start with. As you brought it right back at the beginning because phage are very, very good at that, which is why, as I said, that's why they are
you
great,
can,
potentially great diagnostic tool. So
yeah, yeah. And we're getting to talk about it, right? And people are finding out about it. And anybody with a computer can sit down and say, "Oh, what the hell is a phage?" And then just like pull it up because we have this wonderful tool now. We don't have to go to the library. We
yeah,
don't have to transmit diseases to other people at the library.
correct. And phages are and viruses. Just to clarify for people, if anyone is listening, but probably not, but if they are, that viruses and phage are the same thing. It's the terminology difference in the sense that phage are how we refer to viruses that infect prokaryotic organisms, so bacteria. And then we refer to anything that infects eukaryotes, like say people or animals or even fungi, as a virus. So fungal viruses are called mycotic viruses, and then we just refer to them viruses for humans and animals. And sometimes they call plant viruses, I think, phytoviruses perhaps, but mostly they're just plant viruses. And parasitic viruses they call parasitic viruses, or sometimes endosymbiotic viruses, I think. But the term viruses is reserved for eukaryotics, for viruses that infect eukaryotes, and phage are just viruses that infect prokaryotes. So
Yeah, and one of the things I found interesting was about this, and it's been on my mind, is that you can use phages to control bacteria, right?
yes, for sure.
That may
That's
be
what it's
engineered to do some interesting things, but you don't
yeah.
want them to get out of control, like
And you
those
don't even have to edit it.
bac-
Yep,
bacteria that
yep.
eat plastics, right? Want to clean up the West Pacific gyre? You want to release some plastic eating bacteria into that environment. Well, you might want to think about whether or not you want them to get loose and eat all the plastic in the world. I kind of do, but I'm
Yeah,
weird that way.
gotcha. Yeah, actually, but about phage are actually the most abundant life form on Earth. 10 to the 31 phage, they estimate. That's 1 times 10 to the 31. That's a 1 followed by 31 zeros. Phage on the planet. So they outnumber bacteria, which are the second most populous life form, by about tenfold or 100-fold, they believe. Not that they believe, they actually know. We actually pretty much know this. So the most abundant life form on the planet is actually phage, bacteriophage specifically. But if you believe they're alive. Now, again, phage, the conventional wisdom, I would say the current paradigm is that phage are not alive because they fail several of the key criteria for life. Um, but if you believe they are alive, they're the most abundant life form on Earth.
Oh, it's
If
only a
not, there's bacteria.
quintillion. You're talking.
A quintillion, a quintillion.
Number is actually an undecillion in the
Oh,
long
and
scale system, or sometimes a quintillion in the short scale system. I
I
see.
see, I see.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
One I had to
You
go look it up.
It's crazy. The numbers are just crazy. Hell, you ever see one of those? You know those bacteria plates you always see? They show a picture of an agar plate, and they'll have like a round thing on it, and you say, "That's a bacteria on that plate, right?" You know what I'm talking about? An agar plate, or am I talking Greek here?
Yeah,
It'll
agar.
be
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a round plate,
It's
and
in
you look at it.
actually one of
Yeah,
my favorite treats
yeah,
is largely agar.
yeah, it's right.
It's
Jello,
called a gob, a pumpkin gob.
pumpkin gob.
And they also
Oh,
make
I've never had a
chocolate
pumpkin.
gobs, and they are largely agar.
Okay,
Agar, how you pronounce it.
but we grow bacteria on these agar plates,
Yes. Yes.
and you look at it and you say there's a single colony, there's a colony of bacteria on a plate, and people say that's a bacteria. But actually, that colony, which is maybe a millimeter across or a couple maybe
Ooh, it's
2 millimeters
derived from
across.
red algae,
Yeah, there's 10 to the 9 or 10 to the 10 bacteria in that single dot that you can see, and that gives you a sense of how small bacteria are. Also, I mean, the scale difference between bacteria and people is impossible to imagine. Actually, it's very difficult to conceptualize, but they're so small. And then viruses are 3, 4, or 5 orders of magnitude smaller than that. So it's really, really difficult to wrap your head around how small they are compared to us.
You took me back to ninth grade when I first encountered agar in my biology class, and I had to order this stuff to work with Acinetobacter vinlandii. Are you familiar with
Yeah, Cetibac
Acinetobacter?
I am familiar with Cetibacter, yeah, common BSL-1 organism out there, yeah, common viral organism, yeah.
Yeah, it's produces fluorescent pyoverdine pigments, and I was trying to actually do an experiment where I would change the conditions to show the impact on its fluorescence. It was a failed experiment primarily.
That's 90% of experiments. How people don't realize about science. 90% of experiments fail. 90+% in my experience. Maybe I'm just a bad scientist, but that's how science progresses. Actually, is by failure. And if your experiments always work, you are not doing science. I can tell you that right now. You're doing something else. It's not science because science is all about failure. And I've worked with some scientists who are like that, and that's the first sign of danger. When I start to move away, when I see scientists who every time they run an experiment, they're reporting results were fantastic. This worked perfectly. And I start walking the other direction because it just does not work that way. And if it does, you're not doing it correctly.
Yeah.
So, just a quick tip to people out there: if you ever work with a scientist, they're trying to tell you everything they're doing is working. That they start to have some suspicions about their quality. And not that they're dumb people; they're the smartest people in the world. Some of the smartest people in the world, of course, are scientists, but that's the nature of science. Then that's how we progress. I mean, we have to try things that are going to fail more than we try things that succeed.
Yeah,
If we
actually,
don't, then we're
I'm getting myself into one of these online, little certificate things through masterclass that's being taught by, among other people, Astro Teller, whose whole idea in the moonshot section of Alphabet is to fail forward, right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and a lot of the shots you're gonna take are not gonna work out, but he
yeah,
encourages failure.
for sure. And it's also how you define it too. I mean, failure, just saying something failed,
Yeah,
experiments failed,
well,
doesn't
it's
mean
like
it how you define
Edison said, right?
failure. You still learn. You still learn something, even for the ones that fail. You learn tons.
It's like
So
Edison said, "I found, like, 100,000,000 ways that don't work."
exactly right. It's the way, and it's more than that. It's more than that. In my career, it's way more than that. The downside is when you're in industry like I am, the
Dick
implications of
O'Brien said, "We
failure.
learn from failure." Yes.
You
Well,
know,
we
it's either,
or we get really
just say
depressed
that
about
your
it
bosses
because
don't
we've
want to
been
hear that though.
raised if we've been raised to expect to get this gold star for participation, and yet you don't get it because we didn't d somebody actually holds us responsible for our results and
It's very
doesn't
cultural.
give
It's
us
very
that.
cultural. I know it's
Right.
very cultural too.
I
The
don't know,
different cultures
man.
I work with, the scientists in different cultures have it. They do things differently, and they expect different things, and they act differently. And I
Well,
think some are smart.
isn't it true that in the Soviet Union that a lot of the efforts that were, tried ended up people getting executed for failure?
Yeah, I mean
That didn't really get a damper on your science.
it can be.
I'm not
That
even gonna
just
try, man.
discourage you from trying anything risky. That's for sure. And you also have this kind of, at least I hate that. I really don't like stereotyping, and I try to avoid it
No,
at
no,
all
I'm
costs.
sorry about that.
That wasn't stereotyping. But I'm going to stereotype right now. I should have just preface with by saying that it tends to the Asian cultures tend to be more, let's see, authority oriented. And again, I'm stereotyping here, and I'm speaking in very, very broad brush terms. There's less individualism, less value on individualism as there is in, say, like it's the Western world. And so the belief that authority is correct is prevalent. You sort of by default believe that what your elders tell you is the right thing. Whereas, and then that also happens in the West, of course, but I think there's more questioning that happens. And if you look at the scientific method, it is a radical method. It is a questioning. It's a method that requires you to question everyone. It doesn't matter who they are or what position they're in. If they're your grandfather, your dad, your mom, or your president, your prime minister, you have to question them just the same way, just as hard as you would anyone else. And I think in my mind, that's sometimes more difficult for someone coming from an Asian culture to do. And so I think sometimes the scientific method is a bit of a struggle, more of a struggle for persons of that background. And that's not that they can't do, they obviously do fantastic science and are fantastic scientists, but I think it's more of a challenge to get their mindset around the idea of challenging and questioning everybody and everything, no matter who they are, what position they're in. So my little stereotypical rant there, but
I'll take it.
yeah.
I was
Please, nobody kill me. Chinese scientists out there right now, I get them sharpening their knives to take me out.
Well, that's a danger we have when we actually go
Yeah,
out into a public forum like this
I
and
know,
start
I know.
talking to each other. It's a
See,
big risk. It's
and
exciting to me, and I figure that, sometimes the only merciful thing to do is to end me.
yeah. I mean, there's
But
plenty. The
hopefully no one's gonna
Western
think.
scientists have plenty of have plenty of things that aren't optimally. Let's put it that way. Non-optimal behaviors as well. So I'm not I'm not trying to say anybody's perfect or anybody knows the right way. But
Oh, man. No. I don't know the right way for sure, but I know a
yeah,
lot
right.
of ways, and I tend to go out the door and I wanna film the passing show. I haven't been out today, actually. This is kinda unusual for me, and I do like to film the passing show, though, and watch all these people going about their business and
So this is a
realize,
different podcast. Sorry, this is a different podcast you have, Hal. So this is. I'm sorry. What is a passing show?
the passing show is when I take my little camera out there, I hit Substack Live, and I've got the camera pointing out instead of at me, and I walk along it's like this old Bob Dylan song. Are you familiar with the freewheeling Bob Dylan? This song called
Yes.
"I Shall Be Free"?
So do you talk to people or you just walk past them or do you
I
actually stop
walk
and talk to them?
past them for the most part. If somebody wants to stop and talk to me, sometimes that happens. Actually, with the people who, like, are panhandling for different causes,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
one time had a pretty long discussion. I was wearing this T-shirt, this very T-shirt, and this girl said, "King Crimson," and she got me to, like, give to the International Rescue Committee.
Hmm.
Right? Because she engaged me about my T-shirt first, and then I said, "Okay, so what are you doing?" I could tell what she was doing, and,
Yeah.
I often tell those people, "Keep up the good work, I definitely
Yeah. It's
support
hard.
right
That's hard to
behind you.
do.
I know this is hard work,
It's
and
hard.
bye."
Yeah. It sucks.
But
Thankless.
she
Thankless work.
engaged me, right? She engaged me on my level. I was heading to a
Yeah.
show at the Hamilton. My cousin Jeff had, gotten me into it was this, guitarist, Bill Frisell. Have you ever heard of Bill Frisell?
Mm. No.
He's an
That's that way.
interesting guitarist, and my
Mm.
cousin Jeff is an interesting guitarist. Jeff Greiner
Mm.
is his name. I wanna get him on the show one of these days. He actually commissioned a stick. Are you familiar with the Chapman stick?
A Chapman stick. No, I'm not. I'm not familiar with a Chapman
Tony
stick.
Levin,
Should I?
with Peter Gabriel as the bassist, right?
Okay. Okay.
And with King Crimson, as well. He, plays the stick. He's probably the most famous stick player. The stick
It's an instrument. The stick is an instrument.
Yeah, it's a tapped stringed instrument with, like,
I see.
10 strings usually. I think it usually has
Okay.
10. So you do
Okay.
bass and lead guitar on the same instrument by tapping it,
By
as opposed
tapping it.
to yeah, you're
It's not
using your
electronic. It's
fingers
a string. Okay.
and
It's like,
it's got a pickup, but it's basically
huh.
like a broad like, I don't know, it's pretty wide because you got 10 strings on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just a stick. It doesn't really have a body as such. It's
Yeah.
just strings,
Me neither.
and it's got tuning
Yeah.
pegs at the top, but,
How smart do you have to be to invent an instrument? I mean, you got to be pretty smart to invent your own instrument. I got to tell you.
oh my god, are you familiar with Future Man? Do you know about Future Man?
I've heard Future Man. I don't know why I've heard that, but I feel like I have.
Roy Wooten with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. He's known as
Okay.
Future Man, and he has
Okay.
developed his own instrument based on the periodic elements chart,
Nice. Nice.
among other things. I haven't seen that one, but I have seen the other things. He's got like a drum tar, it's called, I think, and
Huh.
it's fantastic. So, how bright do you have to be? I don't know, but you might have to
I
be
don't,
a little bit neurodivergent, maybe. I don't know.
it's a different kind of thinking. I have a cousin has a PhD in music theory. He plays he's in an orchestral. I don't remember what he plays, flute or something maybe, or clarinet perhaps. I can't remember what it is, but he got his PhD in music. And I looked at his dissertation because I wrote my dissertation. I said, "Can I see your dissertation?" And he sent it to me. It's just notes. The whole thing. There's like no words in it. I'm like, what the hell is this? I was absolutely blown away by the thing because it was like 300 pages, hell, of just notes, basically musical notes. It's like I said, "How is this a dissertation?" But he got a PhD for it. And I'm like, "Damn!" That blew my mind. That was one of the sort of things that happen sometimes in your life that really blow your mind. That was one thing that really this guy had a hard time wrapping my head around that this is actually a dissertation. It actually written in musical notes, and it was just crazy. It was crazy to me. It was really crazy. It's kind of like when I went to college. And I'd like to tell one more story I tell about when I first went to college. I came from a town in Cleveland, Ohio, west of Cleveland, where I went to high school, which is very a suburb, right? Very white suburb, right? I don't think there were any black. I don't think I ever saw a black person when I was in high school until I went to college. Okay, so that tells you how isolated this little town is, right? And I grew up Catholic. Okay, pretty strict Catholic. I go off to college, and one of the first classes I take because I need the credit is a philosophy of Hinduism class. Okay, philosophy
Okay.
of Hinduism. Okay, so I think the first 2 weeks of the class, I was so lost because I couldn't figure out where they went to church on Sundays. because, because I couldn't wrap my brain around the idea that there was a religion that didn't have a church, that they didn't go on Sundays to go to mass or whatever. And I can still remember my mindset at the time and how confused I was. I'm looking at everybody else and I'm wondering if they're as confused as I am. And nowadays I look at that and I think, how ignorant was I to be confused by that? But literally,
Well, you
it was
don't have a
such an alien
context, right?
concept. Right, I had no context, and it was such an alien concept to me. And they're talking about these things, the Bhagavad Gita and all this different stuff. Like, what? Well, where's the Bible?
Oh
What's going
man.
on here? It was just blew my mind. It's one of the good things about going off to college, I guess, is that you are exposed to different things like that, and which is goes to show you how if you grow up isolated and how you can see how people get so narrow in their thinking if they don't ever get out of what they're used to.
Well, right. My mother grew up in like 18th century conditions on a farm in North Carolina, and she went to the Philippi Church of Christ. That's what we call it, Church of Christ, like Christo
Yeah,
meant.
yeah,
But they were convinced it was the only true church because it's the only one that bore his name,
yeah,
Christ. You know,
yeah.
I don't think Jesua ben Joseph ever used the word Christ.
It's weird that yeah, we could talk forever about religion. That's not a topic I do talk about. I do write about quite a bit, but probably I don't write about it nearly as much as I write about science, and probably thankfully so because
Yeah,
rarely have anything interesting to say about it. But I find it funny and I find it interesting to talk about sometimes.
it
Unlike
is
music, which I
fun to
never
talk
talk about.
about. I mean,
I never.
Jainism is really my go-to for this stuff. You know, Jainism.
So that's the one where you can't kill anything, right? Like everything, you kill even an insect or something. You can't step on anything. Like you gotta be careful when you sit down and everything. Is that Jainism or am I thinking of something else?
Core principles are nonviolence. Ahimsa it's called.
Okay, okay,
Asceticism,
okay.
Vada, the belief in a broad perspective and a rejection of simplistic one-sided
But
views. I love that.
but can you kill an ant? But you can't kill ants though. Even is that Jainism where you're not even supposed to
I
kill an ant
think,
if you see
yeah,
an
you're
ant?
not supposed to. Yeah. Nonviolence is the one that do not harm any living being,
Any living being. Okay,
even
yeah.
a phage. Don't harm phages.
But they may not be living beings, so the current paradigm says they are not alive. So you would be okay there.
I don't know, man. Okay.
I disagree with that. I
Truth.
happen to think they are alive, but that's my own opinion. So
Truth. Satya. Speak only the truth. And what,
all
how you
great
do
points.
that? Do not talk.
The problem is, right, exactly. That's a very difficult one to follow. Speak only the truth.
Well, my buddy, this is
Not a lot of Janes out there.
the director of religious life at Randolph-Macon when I was there, was part of the inner circle of this guy, Mayor Baba, the
Yeah.
Awakener. And this is Charles Haynes' book that he wrote as a doctoral thesis or something, or dissertation. I've not yet
Yeah.
read it all. This is the second edition in 1993. But when I knew him, he was working on it and published the first one in 1989. That was 3 years after I'd departed from his company. And a fascinating guy because Mayor Baba didn't speak. After
He never spoke.
1924, he
He
didn't
never
say
spoke.
a damn word.
Yeah. That's crazy, man.
But he
Because that
did
was part
use
of
an
his.
alphabet board, which is really kind of fascinating to watch him use an alphabet
This was part
board
of his
for
religious
music.
practice. This is why he didn't speak because of his religious beliefs. His. Is that why, or was there?
Well, it's partly that. He was the avatar of the age,
Okay.
according to him. Eventually, he decided to let people know that he was the eternal returning ancient one. And Pete Townshend's into it, right? That's what Tommy
Yeah.
is about, the musical
Okay.
by The Who. I just saw The Who, at the September 10th at Philadelphia and performing there. And I had this in my pocket. It was on front row and I thought about holding it up, but then I thought, nah, I'll attention myself. That's kind of crass. But to show that I identified and I knew where he was coming from, because a lot of what he's talking about, bargain, I'd gladly lose me to find you, gladly give up all I've got. I don't think he's given up all he's gotten. He's pretty rich, but
Yeah.
it is what it
There's a
is.
lot of
And
hypocrisy.
that was the
There's
day that
only
they
some hypocrisy. There's
that
no
was the
religion, no
freaking
hypocrisy in religion. Hal, are you crazy? Come on.
that was the
There's,
freaking day they shot Charlie Kirk. That was the first thing I saw when I came into my hotel to change into my T-shirt that was going
it's
to
so
go to
funny.
the show.
This guy,
Was
this guy sent me a text on that. I said, "Who's Charlie Kirk? Was that dude from Star
I
Trek?"
didn't
That's why I said,
know.
like,
Yeah, I
I
didn't
didn't either.
know. I missed it.
I thought it was the guy from Star. Like, you mean Captain Kirk from Star Trek? That's what I responded
But
back in the
then
text.
it turns out, I just found out he sent 80 buses to the January 6th rally in front of the White House. 80 buses. He
Who did?
caught
Charlie Kirk or who did?
Charlie Kirk.
Oh, he's the guy. Okay, okay. Well, this guy
I
that
don't
just sent
know,
me the thing is
man.
he's from Scottsdale. Apparently, he's from Scottsdale. This Charlie Kirk guy, and there's a big tech community there. Of course, he's big in the tech
Scottsdale,
people.
Arizona. Maybe
Yeah,
it's an
huge tech.
anti-tech.
It's like the
No, that's
It's
like
like
he
the Silicon
rules the
Valley
tech,
too.
right? He
Yeah.
really got what we're
He,
he
oh,
got in there and did what we're trying to do, which is
yeah,
amass this
correct.
huge following for
Yes, they are
Harrowings.
correct. And all the tech people there are into him, and including this guy that sent me the text message about it because this guy is like a cool guy. I really like the guy. I really only met him recently, but very, very super smart. I mean, he's really in the tech world and AI and all this stuff. And a really great guy. And he's the one that sent me this message about Charlie Kirk. And I'm like, who is this guy? And I had no idea who he was, but then he educated me. And the reason he knew him is because he's from Scottsdale, and the tech community there all knew him, and they were all it's a small community, right? So everybody knew each other, and I don't know. So there's a lot of these tech guys are very conservative because of that Charlie Kirk connection and others. But I don't know that they take it the same way the way their conservatism is weird, in my opinion. It's unusual, and I don't know what to make of it sometimes. There's so much contradictions there that I see, and they don't see, or maybe they don't ignore it or what. But
Could we kind of
uh,
sum this up by saying, about this weird behavior that might be primate behavior?
it's something weird about it. There's something contradictory, self-contradictory about. On the one hand, I kind of want to go on. I don't want to get started on it, but it seems
Yeah.
the negativity part of it I don't like. That's what I don't like about it. And the anti it's against everything instead of being for things. That's what I don't like things that are against everything, like and not for anything. It's easy because it's so easy to be against things or to be anti something or so saying something is this is bad, this is horrible, and this is what you should be afraid of. It's pro fear, and I am not a fan of fear at all. And in fact, I find it offensive, and so that bothers me.
Well, I'm actually not a fan of fear either. I'm a fan of love. I think I see this as like
Yeah,
light and dark, but I know that fear
yeah,
is the sort of belief in the absence of a radiant, all-encompassing presence of love, right? It's the
yeah,
shadow. It's the shadow.
yeah,
It's like when the earth turns, you fall into night, night and day, fear and love, black and white, and it's all shades of gray, right? We're mixed up confusion.
yeah.
And if you're not fearful at all, you're dangerous
Yeah, I mean,
to
there's
yourself
this
and others.
evolutionary. There's definitely an evolutionary need for fear. I'm not saying you don't. The fear is definitely required for survival. There's no doubt about it. But that's it.
Let me take
That's
you to
it
Moby
doesn't.
Dick.
That's all it's required for it. There really is not required for that. And same with suffering. You get this. I hate this. I really hate this attitude where well, suffering is good for you. And even doctors have this attitude. Oh, it's okay. Suffering makes you stronger. And that's bullshit. And suffering is not necessary. It is not required, and we could eliminate it if we tried. It would be very very difficult, and maybe not practically possible. At least not right now. But everyone's just giving up on it. They're like, "I'll forget it. It's not worth it." Where
Well,
people
a
are going to
couple
suffer,
things.
so we're
Couple
just going to
things.
suffer.
One of them is Calvin and Hobbes, whose dad is always telling him that, be cold is character building.
Yeah, that's right.
I
Exactly.
knew it.
Yes,
And then
that's
the
it's
other one
all.
is Moby Dick, the candles, the chapter 119 of Moby Dick. Have you ever read it?
I've read Moby. Well, I've gotten through parts of it, most of it. Let's say.
Zero in
Man,
on
that's a tough one.
119. It's
It's
a
a tough one
chapter
for me.
called The Candles. And they're in the midst of a storm, right? And it's an electrical
Yeah,
storm. The Saint, is it called St. Elmo's fire or Saint something
say almost.
fire?
Yeah,
Is sparking off of the mast of the Pequod. And the crew is like shuddering and terrified, cowering, as this storm is crashing. And Ahab grabs the damn chains that are going up the mast, and the lightning is flashing like off his teeth. And he's telling the storm that in the face of a personified impersonal stands a personality. You can smite me, but I can, be blinded. You can
yeah.
burn me to ashes, but I can be ashes. He's
He's
blaspheming like
giving it to Mother
crazy,
Nature. He's giving it to
right?
Mother Nature. Giving it as good
Right
as
in
she's getting it.
there. And he's like, look, they're lighting the way to the white whale.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he is fearless, and he's
yeah.
drawing these men to their doom
Yes, yes.
because of his single-minded kind
Yeah.
of obsession with getting that damned white whale.
Well, you look at
That
Apocalypse Now. It's a
motherfucker
good.
took my leg.
Yeah. Captain Kilgore. It reminds me of Apocalypse Now and Captain Kilgore and the guy who was Yeah, the same way. All the bombs are dropping all around him, and he's just up there, telling us, "Get out, Charlie, don't, sir, get out there and surf," and ordering his men to go out there and surf and all this. I don't know. Great movie, also, but
Great movie. I love the Gregory Peck portrayal of Ahab.
yeah,
Gregory Peck was a great actor. Great man.
yeah.
I really kind of sorry that I missed him in some ways. He was actually giving like his memoir talk or whatever at Pittsburgh's Carnegie Music Hall or whatever,
They have
the
a famous
Carnegie
Carnegie,
Library. Yeah.
yeah, famous music for the music there. Actually, Hal, I gotta get going here, buddy.
Yep. Oh,
I
yeah,
didn't
we've
realize
been
what time. I
going
didn't
a
realize what time.
while.
I didn't realize what time it was, man.
Almost
Just I start
4 o'clock
going.
on my end. What is it,
I
1
start
o'clock on
talking.
yours?
I don't know. It's like 12. It's time for me to go.
Yes.
12.
Well, we're gonna wrap this one
Hey,
up. I see
but let me
Rick
say I'm sorry
O'Brien
again.
out there, and I
Before
wanted to
before I wrap it
say,
up,
yeah,
I gotta apologize, Hal, publicly again one more time. I'm sorry
oh,
about the time mix
it's
up because
all no
very
big deal.
unprofessional. It was not intentional, I promise you. So
It's no
it
big
won't
deal
happen
to
again.
me.
If
I'm
you have
glad
me
we
back, it
caught
won't
up.
happen again. Yeah, me too.
Hey, we'll do
Always
it
great to
again
talk.
sometime. Yep. Have
Please,
a good one.
anytime. All
I'm
right,
hitting end. Bye.
later.